Take a moment before you continue scrolling past. If you or someone you care about receives Social Security, SSI, or SSDI, the details I'm going to share with you over the coming minutes may significantly impact your financial situation in 2026. Congress recently passed an important measure, and the major news outlets did not highlight it much. They overlooked some of the key points that are most relevant to the over 70 million Americans who rely on these programs each and every month to cover their expenses, purchase their food, and maintain their households. I am referring to actual updates, additional funds, and important time limits that you should not overlook. Whether you are a retired person getting Social Security, a disabled citizen on SSDI, a low-income older adult getting SSI, or an individual who has been hoping for assistance in the form of an additional payment, this recent legislation impacts all of these areas. And if you fail to learn what has been modified, what you may now be eligible for, and what actions you should consider, there is a genuine possibility that funds you are qualified for might not arrive in your account. This is not speculation. This is not designed to attract attention. This is Congress officially passing a bill that influences your benefits, your checks, and your economic well-being beginning immediately in 2026. I have explained all of it in clear everyday language. No complicated legal terms, no baffling official wording, just the important details you require, described the way a reliable friend would describe them. We are going to discuss precisely what was modified, precisely who is eligible, precisely the amounts of money involved, and precisely the actions you should consider before the time limits arrive. If you appreciate someone sharing honest information with older adults about their finances, please tap that like button now and we can explore it together. Now that you recognize this is important, allow me to guide you through all the details gradually, section by section, because you merit the complete information, not only the main points. Let's begin with the major inquiry that is likely already in your thoughts. What precisely did Congress pass? And why is it so relevant to older adults, to disabled citizens, and to the millions of individuals who have been depending on the government to provide support for them in 2026? The response has several aspects, and I want to ensure you grasp each aspect thoroughly because each has immediate effects on your monthly earnings, your purchasing ability, and your capacity to organize your economic future with certainty moving ahead. The bill that was passed constitutes one of the most notable updates to the Social Security system and associated federal assistance programs in more than 10 years. We are not referring to small modifications or minor changes hidden in a lengthy document that few examine. We are referring to fundamental modifications. Modifications to the way benefits are figured. Modifications to eligibility for particular payments. Modifications to the way cost of living increases are figured. Modifications to the way SSI participants are handled according to the rules. And yes, sections that connect directly to payment style assistance that are aimed particularly at lower income older adults and disabled citizens who did not receive support in earlier periods of economic assistance. Now, before we discuss the particular figures and the particular sections, I want to provide you with some background because I believe it assists in comprehending why this occurred and why it occurred at this time. For a long time, and I mean numerous years, supporters for older adults and for individuals with disabilities have been raising concerns about the reality that Social Security payments have not matched the true expenses of living for the individuals who rely on them the greatest. The usual cost of living increase, the COLA, is connected to an inflation measurement that analysts have argued for a while does not properly show how older adults truly use their funds. Older adults use a much larger portion of their funds on medical care, on prescribed drugs, on shelter, and on meals. And the costs for all of those items have gone up much quicker than the overall inflation figures that the COLA computation is based upon. At the same time, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, which is the program that assists the lowest income older adults and disabled citizens, has been functioning under payment amounts and qualification guidelines that in certain instances have not been substantially revised since the 1970s. The resource restrictions, the earnings guidelines, the marriage penalties, all of it has remained unchanged, while the expense of everything around it has risen dramatically. An older adult on SSI in many locations was getting a monthly payment that was insufficient to pay for even a simple room in a group living arrangement, not to mention meals, travel, and medical care in addition to that. That is not a viable circumstance, and Congress eventually acted to deal with it. So, what precisely did the recent legislation modify? Allow me to guide you through the main sections one at a time, starting with Social Security retirement payments, then SSDI, then SSI, and then the additional payments, because each category is influenced in different ways, and I want to ensure the details I am providing you are particular and applicable to your circumstances. For Social Security retirement participants, which refers to the individuals who contributed to the system throughout their working years and are now collecting their earned payments. The most notable modification concerns the COLA computation approach. Beginning in 2026, the increase is being connected to an alternative inflation measure, one that is particularly created to follow the expenditure habits of individuals above the age of 62. This measure, which experts refer to as the CPIE, the Consumer Price Index for the Elderly, assigns more importance to medical care and shelter expenses, which, as I noted, are the areas where older adults actually use the most funds. The actual outcome of this modification is that the COLA for Social Security participants in 2026 is larger than it would have been under the previous method, and not just a bit larger for many participants, particularly those who have been getting payments for an extended period and have experienced their buying ability gradually decrease. The difference is significant. We are referring to extra funds in your monthly payment that throughout the year can accumulate to a meaningful difference in your daily living. There is also a section in the recent legislation that deals with what has traditionally been known as the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. Two regulations that have decreased Social Security payments for millions of Americans who were employed in particular public positions or in positions that did not deduct Social Security contributions. These regulations have been highly debated for many years. Many individuals, educators, firefighters, law enforcement, state and local public workers dedicated years to public duty, then also worked in positions covered by Social Security, only to discover their Social Security payments considerably decreased because of these regulations. The recent bill adjusts and in certain instances removes these decreases, meaning that for a large number of participants, monthly payments are going to rise. And in certain instances, the rise is considerable. If this appears like it might relate to you or a person in your household, please focus carefully on this section, because there may be extra funds due to you, and you might need to act to ensure you obtain it. Now, let's discuss SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. SSDI is the program that supplies payments to employees who become disabled prior to attaining full retirement age and who have contributed adequate Social Security taxes during their employment years to be eligible. The modifications to SSDI under the recent legislation are centered mainly on two topics: the definition of disability and the income regulations that control what participants can receive without forfeiting their payments. On the definition aspect, the recent legislation instructs the Social Security Administration to revise and update the standards used to assess disability applications with a particular emphasis on situations that have traditionally been underrepresented or minimized in the assessment procedure. This includes certain psychological health situations, certain ongoing pain situations, certain autoimmune conditions, and situations that are disabling, but that might not have clear physical signs that are simple to record in a health file. For individuals who have been refused SSDI payments because their situation did not match cleanly into the current assessment structure, this is an important progress. It means that if you were earlier refused and your situation fits into one of these groups, you might have reasons to submit again and obtain a better assessment. On the income aspect, this is where the substantial gainful activity regulations come in. The recent legislation raises the level at which a disabled individual's earnings cause an examination or a possible payment decrease. This is very important for individuals who wish to attempt to go back to employment in some way, but who have been hesitant to do so because even small earnings could endanger their SSDI payments. The new higher level provides disabled Americans greater space to explore their capacity to work without instantly endangering the support system they rely upon. That is a genuine improvement in daily living for millions of individuals, and it shows a more compassionate view of what it means to exist with a disability and to attempt to be as independent as possible within your constraints. Now let's move to SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And I want to dedicate a bit more time here because the modifications to SSI are honestly some of the most delayed and most significant in the whole set of legislation. SSI is the program for individuals who are 65 or older, blind, or disabled, and who have quite restricted earnings and resources. It is not identical to Social Security retirement payments, or SSDI. You do not require an employment record to be eligible for SSI. It is a needs-based program, and it aids some of the most at-risk individuals in our nation. The resource restrictions under SSI have remained at $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple since 1989. Let me just allow that to settle for a second. 1989, the year that the Berlin Wall was dismantled. Since that year, the SSI resource restriction has not changed, not $1. In the meantime, the expense of everything from a pre-owned vehicle to a month's housing to a health crisis has grown by hundreds of percent. Individuals on SSI have been restricted, unable to put aside funds, unable to create any sort of economic reserve, unable to do practically anything to enhance their future economic security without endangering losing the payments they require to live. That is not a system that promotes human respect. That is a system that penalizes being poor, and it has required modification for a long period. Under the recent legislation, the resource restrictions for SSI are being increased considerably. The particular new levels represent a major rise from the 1989 amounts, and they are also adjusted going forward so that they increase with inflation instead of being fixed in position until the next legislative action. This means that for the first time in many years, SSI participants will be able to put aside some funds to create a modest emergency reserve, to reserve something for unforeseen costs, to have just a small amount of economic space without instantly losing their qualification for the program. There are also modifications to how certain kinds of earnings are handled under SSI, including modifications to how earnings from part-time employment are calculated, how presence and family support are handled, and how the so-called in-kind support regulations function. The in-kind support regulations have long been a cause of significant confusion and irritation for SSI participants. Because under the previous regulations, if a family member covered your housing, or purchased you meals, or assisted you in nearly any physical way, those contributions could be considered as earnings and decrease your SSI payment dollar for dollar. The recent legislation substantially updates these regulations, making it simpler for family members to offer assistance without accidentally reducing the payments of their family members. That is a truly valuable modification for older adults who depend on their grown children or other relatives for assistance. And it acknowledges the reality of how lower-income households actually operate and assist one another. Now let's discuss the additional payments, because I know that is what many of you have been eager to learn about, and I do not want to make you wait any longer. Yes, the recent legislation contains sections for direct payments, payment-style checks aimed particularly at Social Security, SSI, and SSDI participants who are under certain earnings levels. These are not general payments to all people in the nation the way the earlier checks were. These are particularly created as support for older adults and disabled citizens who have been affected most by inflation, by increasing medical care expenses, and by the insufficiency of payment increases over past years. The payment arrangement is structured, meaning that the sum you get depends on your earnings level, your payment type, and your household status. The lowest earnings participants, mainly those on SSI, are set to get the largest payments, showing the understanding that this group has been most strongly impacted by the difference between payment levels and actual costs. Social Security retirement participants and SSDI participants in the lower earnings groups are also qualified for payments, although the sums differ based on overall earnings and whether you are single or married. Here is something very essential that I need you to listen to clearly. For most participants, these payments will be sent automatically based on the data already available with the Social Security Administration. You will not need to complete a new form or demonstrate your qualification from the beginning. However, and this is a major however, there are cases where you might need to act. If your address on record with the Social Security Administration is old, if your direct deposit details have been modified, if you have lately relocated or switched banks, or if you have not submitted a recent tax document and the SSA does not have up-to-date earnings data for you, you could overlook your payment or have a substantial wait. And the period to update this data and make sure you are in the system properly is not endless. Please take the time today, not next week, to confirm that your data with the Social Security Administration is up to date and correct. I also want to discuss a worry that I know is in the thoughts of many older adults viewing this, and that is the issue of fraud. Every time there is information about government payments or benefit modifications, the fraudsters become active. They send false text messages, false emails, false documents that appear legitimate. They phone older adults claiming to be from the Social Security Administration and stating that you need to give your Social Security number, your bank account details, or some sort of charge in order to get your payment. Let me be completely clear. The actual Social Security Administration will never telephone you and request your Social Security number. They will never request a charge to handle your payment. They will never request you to confirm your bank account details over the telephone. If you get any contact like that, end the call, remove it, and notify the authorities. The proper method to examine your benefits, update your data, and confirm any payments is through the official Social Security Administration website or by contacting the SSA's official toll-free number directly. Do not select links in text messages. Do not telephone numbers from emails. Go straight to the source. Now, I want to discuss something that extends past the particular sections of this legislation because I think it relates to something bigger about what this time represents for older adults and for disabled citizens in this nation. For too many years, the individuals who rely the most on these federal programs have been considered as secondary in policy discussions. The political conversation usually centers on employees, on companies, on the economy in general terms, and the older adults and disabled citizens who are living on set incomes, who cannot return to employment to add to their payments when inflation reduces their buying ability, who are one unexpected health expense away from a real emergency. They have too often been overlooked in those discussions. This recent legislation is not flawless. No legislation ever is. There are supporters who will say that the modifications do not extend far enough, that the SSI resource limit increases, while appreciated, should be even larger, that the COLA update, while a step forward, still has shortcomings, that the additional payments, while helpful, do not completely make up for years of insufficient payment growth. Those observations are reasonable and worth considering carefully. But what this legislation represents is progress in the positive direction. A recognition by Congress that the previous situation was not effective for the most at-risk individuals in our community and that genuine steps were necessary for you sitting at home right now. The inquiry is not whether the legislation is flawless. The inquiry is what it signifies for your life, your finances, and your future. And the truthful response is that it signifies more funds, more options, more security, and more possibility to reach a level of economic stability that the previous regulations made nearly unachievable for many individuals. So, what should you do with all of this information? Allow me to summarize it with very specific practical steps. First, visit the official Social Security Administration website and sign into your My Social Security account or establish one if you have not done so yet. This is your most valuable resource for keeping track of your benefits, confirming your payment details, looking for any alerts or upcoming items on your account, and making sure that your direct deposit or address data is up to date. Second, if you think you might be eligible for an increased payment under the WEP or GO updates, and that means you were employed in a public job or a job not covered by Social Security, reach out to the SSA directly or talk with a Social Security benefits advisor to determine if you are due additional funds and what actions you should consider. Third, if you are now on SSI and have been maintaining your savings below the previous resource restrictions to safeguard your qualification, you now have additional space. Speak with a benefits advisor about how to utilize the new regulations without accidentally causing issues for your situation. Fourth, look for official communications from the Social Security Administration in your mailbox. Genuine information about your benefits will arrive through official SSA mail, not through social media, not through text messages, not through calls from unknown people. And fifth, pass along this information, please. The older adults who are most likely to overlook what they are eligible for are the ones who are alone, who are not on the internet, who are not viewing recordings like this one. Phone them, see them, share what you discovered today. This is your money. You worked for it or you became eligible for it through situations that were not your decision. Every dollar of it is yours, and you deserve to get every single dollar without mix-ups, without waiting, and without being exploited by individuals who would take advantage of your doubt. I am going to continue providing you this information as it progresses, as the application details become more clear and as new time limits and needs appear. So, make sure you are following, make sure you have alerts activated, and make sure you tap that like button right now so that this recording reaches the older adults who require it the most. You deserve to be knowledgeable. You deserve to be safeguarded, and you deserve every payment that the law allows you to get.